violence or no other kind of violence.
Get away! I could be at work, at school, in my car, I can still get shot by the police, but I can get shot anywhere.
So it is what it is.
What's good, YouTube? It's a Black Gen Z Mindset. Make sure you go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe. And let's get into the video.
Initially, St. Paul police did not request a no-knock warrant from a judge as they looked to gather evidence in a murder case. But sources tell me Minneapolis police would not serve the warrant unless it was a no-knock. Tonight, growing calls to further restrict them across the state.
All right, guys. So we're going to talk about this Amir Locke situation. And just to give you some context, Amir Locke was killed by the Minneapolis Police Department during a no-knock warrant in search for a murder suspect. So the location that the police and the SWAT team had on Amir Locke basically was a known place for this suspect to frequent, maybe even his residence. Who knows? But at the end of the day, it looks like, unfortunately, Amir was hanging around some killers, man. Some real deal super gremlins. And they said that his family said that he wanted a rap career. So maybe he was hanging around these guys because they were truly his friends. Or maybe he was hanging around these guys to pull a 6ix9ine and get in good with a certain type of people to validate his street credibility when he is rapping. I don't know. But I will say, though, it's a tragic accident. And we'll get into it deeper in the video.
Police search warrant! Police search!
9 seconds. That's how much time Amir Locke had between police entering the apartment without knocking and him being shot dead. The echoes of those shots already reverberating at the state capitol.
This current case in Minneapolis is proof of the fact that we need to do more.
State Representative Athena Hollins has been a vocal critic of no-knock warrants, saying they create too much risk for both law enforcement and citizens to make a split-second deadly decision.
So, as you can see, Amir knew where he was at. So much so that he was sleeping with a gun in his hand. So I think we have to have a discussion about the environment that he has put himself in, right? Wrong place at the wrong time, definitely. But why do you feel like you have to go to sleep with a strap in your hand? I own multiple firearms and I've never felt like it needed to be in my hand while I'm sleeping anywhere in my house. And obviously it's not his house, but I'm not saying that it's his fault. I'm just saying I wonder what his thought process was to be sleeping with a firearm in his hand. Like I said, tragic accident, but why? Whose crib are you at to where they're getting hit up on warrants for a murder?
If we can use a tool other than no-knock warrants, we absolutely should. It should be a tool of last resort.
Last year, the legislature took some steps to regulate when no-knocks are used and now requires their use to be tracked. Does that go far enough?
No. I would argue that it absolutely doesn't go far enough.
Hollins says she's already working on a bill to further restrict the use of no-knocks statewide, except in the most extreme high-risk cases.
And that's a problem. You're leaving it up to, it's still very general. Because what is an extreme case? A murder, right? Is a murder an extreme case? I'm sure the victim's family would think so. So how do you determine what is an extreme case? To use a no-knock warrant. I think it's appropriate to use a no-knock warrant for a murder suspect, definitely, because you don't know what he's going to be on, and you want to use the element of surprise to catch him. Because if he hears you knocking on a door and announcing yourself, which they did announce themselves, they just didn't knock on the door. But if he hears you then he might bust back, just like what happened in New York with those 2 officers that were killed by the super gremlin who got in a domestic dispute with his mother.
This was a murder case. That would seem to be a high-risk situation.
It would, except that as far as we know, and we know we're still waiting for more information to come out, we know that this was an evidence-gathering warrant and not necessarily an apprehension, right?
But there's a possibility that the suspect could be there, correct? At the end of the day, I want to know who this suspect is and how or what murder he's accused of committing, right?
We have breaking updates tonight in the deadly police shooting that happened yesterday morning in Minneapolis. In just the last few hours, the city released footage from an officer's body-worn camera.
A warning, though, it could be disturbing to watch. It shows the encounter that killed Amir Locke inside a downtown apartment.
Police search for it! Police search for it! Police search for it!
Wow.
Jeff Wagner is here now to walk us through the video and what we've learned tonight about this investigation. Jeff.
Amelia, earlier today, Locke's family first viewed the video, which is what city leaders wanted before they released it to the public. Now, the elements of the video unfold quickly, as you just saw. The video clip itself was 15 seconds in total, but an officer's gun goes off 9 seconds after police enter the apartment. Officers use a key to open the door and immediately start shouting search warrant and other commands as they enter. MPD gave us this slowed down version of the footage. Their guns are drawn, flashlights on. They then kick the couch that Locke is sleeping on.
And that's what really got him to react in the way that he did. Apparently the firearm he had was legal and all, he was good. But whose crib is that? That's my question.
And as he awakens and gets up, he is holding a gun. Officer Mark Hanneman shoots him. Police also released this still frame from the video showing the gun in Locke's hand. Yesterday, police said the gun was pointed at officers. At a press conference with Mayor Jacob Frey tonight, community leaders asked Interim Police Chief Amelia Huffman if she could specifically point out when the gun was pointed at the officer.
And this is a split-second decision. Obviously it's tough on both ends. So it's really just a tragic accident, and I know everybody wants to turn it into something racial and whatnot, but wrong place, wrong time, tragic accident, and that's pretty much all you can really say. Like I said, I would love to know his relation to the murder suspect as well.
So if you look at that still image, even though you don't see all of the officers, the involved officer was just outside the frame in the direction that barrel is emerging from the blanket.
But it looked to me as if that gun in Mr. Locke's hand was pointed toward the floor.
And certainly when the county attorney's office reviews that case, they will be carefully examining all of those factors.
And I think at the end of the day, they're going to deem this as a justified shooting, even though I know the community does not want to hear that. But you come to serve a warrant to a murder suspect, you pull up, the guy has a gun. It's at that point, you don't know what's finna go down. So, man, I mean, it just sucks that he was there sleeping on the couch of a murder suspect's apartment.
And I'm absolutely positive they will take a look at that.
It was not long after that answer that civil rights attorney Nakima Levy-Armstrong passionately interrupted the press conference. She's part of a new city commission to improve public safety and said Frey and Huffman's response to the shooting is not what voters want.
What they were expecting is a new beginning. That's why they gave you more power and authority. So that is what we want to see as the residents of Minneapolis. We don't want to see cover-ups. We don't want to see whitewashing.
How is this a cover-up? How is it a cover-up? They released the footage damn near immediately after.
People are asking very simple questions that have still not been answered. Amelia, you're saying you want to be the chief. then act like it.
We learned some other new details tonight. St. Paul police had a warrant to search 3 apartments in the building related to a homicide investigation. Chief Huffman did confirm that Locke was not named in the search warrant and added that St. Paul police recovered evidence from the building that could be related to that initial homicide investigation.
Wow. So they still got the evidence that they were looking for to pursue this homicide suspect. Like I said, tragic accident, but what is his relation to this guy, man? It seems like he was just around the wrong people and it cost him his life.
Jeff, a lot going on there. All right, thank you. There is still a lot that we don't know about this police shooting. We talked to experts to get answers about warrants, gun rights, and gaining access to apartments. You can find that story on WCCO.com. The attorneys for Locke's family are speaking tomorrow, and we'll keep you updated on WCCO and CBS News Minnesota. We're learning that St. Paul police did not originally ask for a no-knock warrant. It was only added after Minneapolis police insisted that they would need it to conduct the warrant. WCCO's Kirsten Mitchell explains what we know so far about the search warrants.
Body camera footage shows Minneapolis police serving a no-knock search warrant, part of an ongoing homicide investigation in St. Paul. Officers are seen using a key to enter the apartment. Only once inside do they announce their presence.
Police search warrant! Police search warrant!
But 2 sources confirmed to WCCO St. Paul police originally asked for a knock and announce warrant, but only went back to get the no-knock warrant after Minneapolis police insisted. The last time St. Paul police served a no-knock warrant was back in May of 2016. Minneapolis Police Interim Chief Amelia Huffman said Thursday Amir Locke was not named on the warrant.
Both a no-knock and a knock search warrant were obtained for those locations so that the SWAT team could assess the circumstances and make the best possible decision about entry.
Last year, the Minnesota legislature passed a law restricting the use of no-knock warrants, adding new requirements and restricting them between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. unless authorized.
According to the medical examiner's report, Locke was shot at 6:48 in the morning. It's unclear if they had authorization because the warrants in this case are still sealed.
Look at the risks that are caused by doing these kinds of dynamic entries and offset that against what we gain in safety as a community.
University of St. Thomas law professor Mark Osler says while many questions remain, it's important to look at the full scope of the investigation.
People's empathy is going to lie with the eyes that they see it through. If you see it through the eyes of the people entering the room in blue, you're going to be thinking about that gun that could kill you. If you see it through the eyes of the person lying on the couch who's suddenly awakened and there's people rushing towards you, that's going to be a very different perspective.
Right. I mean, there's 2 sides to the story. I think the biggest thing is, should the no-knock warrants be used? From what I've heard from officers and whatnot, majority of the time they are very successful. Gives you the element of surprise, and all those things like that. So it's a tough one. Honestly, I think overall it does more good than harm. And that's just the reality. But obviously RIP to Amir Locke. But it just looks like, man, he was wrong place, wrong time.
Minneapolis, Kirsten Mitchell, WCCO 4 News.
We reached out to Minneapolis police. A spokesperson said that each warrant process is completed on an individual case-by-case basis, and they had no further comment on the decision. Stay with WCCO on TV and streaming for continuing coverage of the shooting.
Also tonight, Mayor Jacob Fry says he's putting a temporary ban now on no-knock warrants in Minneapolis.
Political reporter Theo Keith joining us now. And Theo, but the mayor's ban includes an exception.
An important one. The mayor may be taking a bit too much credit for this. Police can still get a warrant if there's an imminent threat and the police chief approves of it. It follows a day of backpedaling by the mayor's allies over what Fry has and hasn't done on the no-knock warrant issue. The Amir Locke killing is raising new questions about both Minneapolis police policy and whether this raid followed state law.
This is the kind of proactive policy making that is going to be coming forward now on a really regular basis.
Mayor Jacob Frey has held himself up as a police reformer. His allies have too. All of Minneapolis, a group that supported Frey in last year's election, claimed the mayor had banned no-knock warrants in his first term. Except Frey didn't. His police chief restricted use of such warrants in 2020. That policy still in place this week when Minneapolis police executed a no-knock raid.
And the reason why he said that he banned it, but he really didn't ban it in its entirety, is because he saw the numbers and the police showed him the numbers, and everybody agreed that they were effective. They have a lot of stuff going on in Minneapolis. A lot of super gremlins on demon time. And these no-knock warrants are effective in them finding these super gremlins and bringing them to justice. But that's pretty much why they haven't banned it in its entirety, because overall it does more good than harm.
Ultimately killing Amir Locke. All of Minneapolis recently removed the claim from its website. The SWAT team carried out its raid at 6:48 a.m. Wednesday, 12 minutes before Minnesota law says no-knock warrants can be conducted, unless a judge agrees that a nighttime search is necessary to prevent the loss, destruction, or removal of objects, or to protect the searchers or the public. Under the law, police have to justify a no-knock warrant, and 2 high-ranking police officials need to sign off on the application. The search warrants are under seal, meaning all questions will stay unanswered for now. At the Capitol, lawmakers passed the no-knock law last summer after intense negotiations. House Democrats initially tried to ban no-knock warrants, except in first-degree murder cases, hostage-taking, kidnapping, terrorism, or human trafficking. But
so those are the extreme cases.
Police opposed those limits. At a committee hearing last March, St. Cloud Chief Blair Anderson said they would hurt police investigations, and he said the use of no-knock warrants is judicious.
I am opposed to this bill because it is dangerous and it is going to create an exponentially higher level of danger in an already inherently dangerous profession.
And see, this is a black man saying that. It's a black man saying that, so is he a coon, Uncle Tom sellout? Come on, guys. We got to be realistic.
In his first comments since Locke's killing, Governor Tim Walz today called on lawmakers to make more changes to Minnesota's no-knock warrant law. He did not say what changes he specifically wanted. House Speaker Melissa Hortman, a Democrat, said lawmakers need more information to know whether the Minneapolis raid followed state no-knock warrant law. Karen?
Crowd gathered in downtown Minneapolis today protesting the deadly police shooting of Amir Locke. Chopper 5 gives us a view from above of the group marching down several streets. Many say they're outraged after the 22-year-old was killed earlier this week. Richard Reeve was at today's rally and has their message.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
With their signs and voice.
I mean, do they want the police officer convicted? Is that what? I mean, you can't just say, oh, this is a bad cop because he shot a dude executing a raid who had a gun. That's not fair either.
They don't get no peace.
I'm here because I want to be alive and not another hashtag.
Hundreds of people gathered outside the government center to protest the deadly police shooting of Amir Locke.
Every single time it's that feeling of like it could have been my cousin, my brothers.
I mean, if he's hanging out with a murder suspect, then absolutely, you're absolutely right.
My friends.
Family members say Wednesday morning, Locke was sleeping at his cousin's apartment. Police say officers with a no-knock warrant entered.
Police search warrant! Police search warrant!
Body camera video seconds later shows Locke starting to get up with a gun in his hand. One officer fired 3 rounds, fatally wounding Locke. 16-year-old Mercy here thinking about Locke's family.
I'm kind of numb, but I think it's important just to show our support and just to know that we're here for them and that they matter.
And I'm going to tell you guys like this. There were we've done stories on Minneapolis. No protests over women, children being shot. Because, why? Because they were killed by super gremlins. So we don't really, it's not that we care about the death per se. It's that we have to make sure that it was a white person who did it. And that's my biggest issue. That's my biggest issue, man. We got so much going on in Minneapolis alone. And no protests. Never any outrage for the murders that go on every single day. And it is what it is.
Locke's family members were here, calling for city leaders to take action.
You should be outraged. You should be outraged. And you, not us, not your people out here, should say enough is enough.
But many here calling for Mayor Jacob Frey, interim police chief Amelia Huffman to resign, for the officers involved to be fired and prosecuted, and for a permanent ban on no-knock warrants.
I mean, at least the protests are peaceful. Okay? As of now.
We need to block no-knock warrants specifically because they're an ambush.
No-knock warrants do more harm than good.
That's absolutely false. That's false. I mean, this case, we've only had really 2 big cases where a no-knock warrant ended in somebody's death and it could be argued that it wasn't justified. Okay? And that's the Breonna Taylor situation, and now this situation here. I'm not even going to go into the Breonna Taylor situation. Obviously, we know that the brother who was in there with her fired at police, so that's why they shot back. In this case, Amir Locke woke up with a strap in his hand, which I'm not saying that's why he deserved to die, but you're at a murder suspect's crib. Like I said, definitely would need to know the relation to that guy who they're looking for. But still, tragic accident. But the police know, and everybody else knows, the mayor knows, that's why he didn't ban it altogether, that no-knock warrants overall are more effective in not only collecting evidence, but capturing suspects of heinous crimes. And if you are accused of committing a heinous crime, then you should be ambushed. You should, like, just the way that a lot of these super gremlins are ambushing people, jacking their cars and shooting them, the police should have the right to go and ambush you the same way you did them. Now, you should always be brought in, if possible, alive rather than dead. But my issue is not much with the element of surprise. Maybe the way they woke him up by kicking the couch was definitely not the right move. But man, like I said, tragic accident.
And with that being said, one innocent life is one life too many. They should be permanently banned.
Huffman was unavailable for comment today. She last spoke about the shooting Thursday and talked about the decision officers have to make.
That's the moment when the officer had to make a split-second decision to assess the circumstances and determine whether he felt like there was an articulable threat, that the threat was of imminent harm, great bodily harm, or death, and that he needed to take action right then to protect himself and his partners.
Protesters here say they hope lawmakers out there are listening and willing to make change.
I want them to take it as importantly as we do, because these are our lives, these are our family, and these are our brothers, these are our kids, these are our friends, and it's important.
And today, Mayor Frey released a statement reiterating that he's imposed a moratorium on both the request and execution of no-knock warrants in Minneapolis.
And that'll change quickly. The homicides are just going to continue to happen, and they're going to be forced to have to bring that back. And if not, there are going to be a lot of people who suffer. Like the police chief said in the previous clip, it's going to handcuff the police. And we know that overall no-knock warrants are effective. So, woo. It's a tough one, though. I'm not saying that it's not a difficult issue to tackle either.
The mayor says that moratorium will remain in effect while his office and policy experts study the issue. Fry says the only exception is if there is an imminent threat of harm to an individual or the public, and in that case, the warrant must be approved by the chief of the police, Brett.
Richard Reeve reporting. Rich, thank you. The Police Officers Federation of Minneapolis, which is the union that represents the officers, says no conclusions should be made on the case until the investigation is complete. In a statement released today, the union says in part, quote, "No officer goes into a dangerous setting like this wanting to use a weapon. That decision was not taken lightly, and the impact of the use of deadly force will affect these officers, their families, and the family of Mr. Locke for the rest of their lives."
Tonight, anger and frustration pouring out into the streets from New York to Minneapolis. Overnight, horns and lights blaring in protest after Minneapolis police shot and killed 22-year-old Amir Locke after entering an apartment on a no-knock warrant that police now say Locke wasn't listed on. Bodycam video capturing the deadly encounter on Wednesday just before 7 a.m. In seconds, officers enter the apartment where Locke appears to be under a blanket. Police say a gun slides from underneath and officers open fire. NBC News has reached out to the officer for comment but has yet to hear back. But that decision took the life of Karen Wells and Andre Locke's son.
That's the moment when the officer had to make a split-second decision.
Put yourselves in our shoes.
Never would I have imagined that I would be standing up here talking about the execution of my son by the Minneapolis Police Department.
Another black life taken by police nearly 2 years after Breonna Taylor was killed while officers carried out a no-knock warrant. Now the mayor of Minneapolis placing a moratorium on the controversial policy.
Everyone knows about the dangers of no-knock warrants from Breonna Taylor and so many others who have died that way.
We tired. I got on the phone. I was so emotionally spent with Andre and Karen.
Uh-oh, we got Ben Crump. He already pulled up. Woo.
And we just tired of it.
But their fight for justice continues. Megan Fitzgerald, NBC News.
Gang violence and other kind of violence.
So it is what it is.